With inflation still creating a moving target of rising costs, and with bank failures a concern in the back of your mind, how do you effectively aim for the future? Investment expert Dave Lynn and I share the first step in adjusting your sights: updating your reserve study. That way you're using the latest inflated figures available. We'll encourage you to keep two thoughts in mind. First, use long-term averages, not the temporary high values we're experiencing today, since proper reserve planning spans decades. And second, remember that investment returns should never be expected to completely offset inflation. The math just plain doesn't work out that way. A good reserve plan acknowledges that natural shortfall and designs a funding plan that makes up the difference. Watch this excerpt from our Investments and Inflation webinar and see for yourself.
Well, thanks, Dave. It's time now to turn the corner a little bit and address a related issue, and that's inflation. Dave, you've been talking about investment safety, liquidity, and return, but the question is, what are boards to do with inflation still high? Launched high last year. Does that affect their decisions? How does that change things?
Well, I would say it doesn't affect their investment decisions, or it shouldn't affect their investment decisions as much as it does their spending decisions. And by that, I mean, if inflation is high, maybe a board wants to look at completing projects sooner rather than later in anticipation of them costing more money in the future. But as far as investing, the real rate of a return of a CD after inflation and after taxes has always been about zero, regardless of where inflation is or taxes. Your primary purpose for investing in CDs or treasury securities is to not lose money. So when inflation is low, interest rates are typically low. And as inflation increases, the Fed will increase the Fed funds rate, try to keep inflation in check. So again, whether you have low inflation or high inflation, I would say you would invest based on anticipated expenses rather than on, where rates are, inflation rates or investment rates at a particular time.
I guess what I'm hearing is that you got to do your investing, make your smart investing decisions, and don't expect to earn enough interest to ever beat inflation. Inflation is generally going to happen. It's going to be out there. And on the reserve study side of things, the inflation works on the entire project, like the entire roof cost. If it's a $100,000 roof, that $100,000 roof gets, with 5% inflation, turns up to $105,000. Whereas if you only have $50,000 set aside in the bank for that roof project, you're only getting interest on that fraction that you actually have in cash. So there's this economic reality of the difference in how the numbers change. Numbers are going to change faster with inflation than they do with interest. So just plan for that difference. Fortunately, we can do that in a reserve study. We know what those numbers are, or we can make good estimates for those numbers. And here's kind of an idea of what that looks like. On the left, you can see a column of different types of associations, a HOA or planned unit development, townhomes, condo apartment style, and then condo high-rise style. And when we look at our clients, the average reserves on deposit, not a lot for the HOA PUDs because they're not maintaining residential structures. It's just a lot less that they're dealing with there. And there's more cash that the townhome, condo, apartment style, condo high-rises are sitting on in their reserve fund. Now, if there is even a 5% split between what you're earning in interest and inflation, and that's a significant split. For a HOA, it's only $50-$60 a year for the average homeowner. So it's not a lot that needs to be compensated in the reserve study. For the other types of associations, it's a couple $300. So spread that over the entire year, and that's very manageable. So the point we want to make is that your reserve study provider is looking at these numbers and is building that difference, that cost, those changes into your multi-year reserve plan so that you are getting prepared to have the right amount of cash at the right time in the future. So don't worry about trying to do something that's impossible. Get enough interest to offset inflation. Your reserve study provider is managing that in the reserve study.
At Association Reserves, we make the present less stressful and the future more secure. If you want to join us in this mission, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment down below on what you'd like to see us address in a future video. Let's plan for your best future.